Everybody, and welcome. Thanks for waiting. We're so excited to have you here today. I'm Rebecca, and I'm the Communications Wizard here at Round Sky Solutions. So thank you for joining us. If you're here for the introductory session on confident cooperative leadership, you're in the right place. And we're going to have a really great discussion today. So first of all, I just want to say in this call, we have folks registered from all over the US and some across the globe, which is pretty amazing how technology works to connect all of us together around this topic of cooperative leadership and democracy. And some of you work at Cooperative, some of you work at nonprofits or conscious businesses, universities, and some of you are coaches and consultants. So we have a pretty diverse crowd that has signed up for this call, so I'm excited to see what comes out of our conversations together. And I'm excited that we've come here today to get a little bit deeper into what confident facilitator skills look like and to connect with each other. So you're in the right place if you are craving a deeper dive into something that might have happened in the last year that maybe you had a little less confidence, it was a little messy, or something you didn't quite know how to address. And collaboration can be hard, and we believe that it's a learned skill, but we know that it's super worth it. And one thing that a participant said in a past training that they didn't realize that this could be learned. They thought they just had to have the right personality in order to facilitate collaboration. And we don't think that's the case, although perhaps it's a little easier to have that personality, whatever that is. So in this space today, we're going to discuss what confidence means to us and to you, and we're going to offer 4 tips, so to speak, on how to boost your confidence based on what we know best, our own course that really focuses on the confidence of cooperative leadership. So we'll be using that as examples as we go, and at the end of the hour, we'll wrap up with some questions and next actions for you to consider. So many of you know us, but I just want to share a quick 3 things that I'd love for you to remember. So one is that Round Sky is a worker-owned cooperative, and many people haven't known that about us in the past, and we are starting to be more visible about our cooperativeness. And we work with all types of leaders, aspiring leaders, and organizations that value and want to improve their democratic and participatory processes. The second thing that I would like to put in your brain is that we often create free offerings like this introductory session to support people in their personal and professional development. And we have a bunch of free webinars, which I'll share some on the screen, that we hosted this past year. We're on things like strategic planning, personal assessment, remote collaboration, decision-making, and more. So maybe you've been to one of those. We have recordings on our website if you want to check those out. And the third thing I want to put in your brain is that our strategic focus for 2019, now the end of 2019 and going into 2020 is really honing in on our cooperative leadership certification program, both level 1 and level 2. And we've worked hard to provide scholarships to our community in the last year, and it's worked out pretty well, win-win for everybody. And we received amazing reviews from our clients, which really highlight some of the confidence boosting that we're going to share today, so you'll see some of that. And applications are being accepted right now, so if you're curious about a deep dive, you can consider that for yourself. So with that, moving to logistics about this webinar. Before we get to know each other, so if you have any questions or to answer our questions, you can type them in the chat box, which Cecile, if you'll just put a little hello, thank you. And you can type to everybody, which is all attendees, or you can shift that to somebody specifically. So if you have a tech question, you might want to message just Round Sky, which is me, also known as Rebecca. And we'll also be leaving some time for questions to explore at the end and scenarios. So if you have something on your mind, we can definitely work through that together. And the session is being recorded and will be shared with you along with other people who signed up for this after the meeting. The recording will be, along with any resources that we mentioned today. And we might have a breakout group. We'll see if that's useful. We'll have some time to chat about what confidence means to us and really dive into what the tips will look like in real life. So just know that you'll be using some different tools as we go through it today. And in general, we'll be keeping everyone on mute so that we can focus on the speakers. Our microphones are really good at picking up background sound. So if I put you on mute, it's not personal, it's just so that we can have this one mic situation. Although there may be some time to open your mics up in different moments. So with that, I'd love to get to know you all. Just a quick introduction to start. So if you could use the chat box and let us know 3 things about yourself. 1, your name, what brought you to this call, maybe your organization, and any questions you might have that are kind of top of mind, and then we'll have them. So if you want to put that in the chat box, and feel free to say hello to each other as well. It would be great to see that. And while you do that, I will introduce myself. So I currently live and have been in New Orleans for about 5 years. I'm originally from California, and I'm excited to be a part of this conversation today because collaborative leadership has come up in so many different contexts throughout my life. And I'm sure people can relate that when collaboration is not working, it has been pretty uncomfortable and a little overwhelming to figure out how to move forward with some of the teams I've been a part of when it's super messy. Because there are a lot of emotions come up in collaboration because we care about our work. So I'm energized to talk about what humanizing and supported confident leadership looks like in this call today. And now I'll let Cecile introduce herself.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So happy to be here with you all today. I'm Cecile Green, one of the co-founders of Round Sky Solutions, and I live near Montpelier, Vermont, which is the heart of the Green Mountains in the northeast of the United States. I have been a social entrepreneur for over 30 years, and during that time, cultivated a strong interest in collaboration and what it takes to actually have effective organizations around shared missions. And I published a Collaboration That Works, a ruthlessly practical handbook for a generative world, that as a training manual that summarizes the research I've done into common workplace dynamics and offers a synthesis of over a dozen collaborative methodologies into a set of practices for healthy shared power. And the most exciting thing for me about this call today is offering a new community space for exploring confident and cooperative leadership together. And back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So feel free to keep introducing yourselves throughout our session today, but before we move on, or as we move on, I want to give us a chance to reflect on what confident cooperative leadership means to each of us with a little somatic presencing. So if you will, soften your gaze, and we're just going to connect inward for now. Wherever you were before this call, just kind of presencing today. So soften your gaze if you will. You can close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And notice wherever your body meets what you're standing or sitting on. Just notice that pressure. Perhaps your feet on the floor, your sit bones on a chair, and notice your breath. And notice whatever feelings you might be experiencing before or during this call, just kind of notice them, not having too much invested in that. And as you're doing that, if you'll bring your thoughts to confident leadership, you're spending your precious time today to discuss this. So you might think about, do you have it? What is it? What does it look like in action? It being confident leadership. Is it something you're born with? Can you strengthen it? Have you noticed it recently? And is there something different about being a confident cooperative leader than just a confident leader? Is there something different about that to you? Is it connected to values? What's special about your specific leadership? You can ease your eyes back open when you're ready, but we'll take the next 30 seconds or so for you to keep reflecting with your gaze softened, or you can write on a piece of paper, or you can even share in the chat box. But just mull around this for a minute, and we'll come back together to share. Okay, so we'll come back together. Thanks for presencing with me. And we are gonna do, before we share what happened, I wanna kind of get a group check on what are we're gonna do some polls that's what Zoom calls it, and see what people are thinking in the group to kind of just see where we're at. So first off, the first question is, do you fit the description of a confident cooperative leader? So you should see this on your screen now, and you'll have you can pick which answer fits yours, fits your most, what resonates with you. Those are yes, 100%, most of the time, every now and then no, but I act like it, fake it till you make it, not at all or very rarely, or not sure yet. So we have one person who's put their vote in, and I'll give you the next 15 seconds, and then I'll share that with you.
Just in case you're having trouble finding the polling place, if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, move your cursor around, you should see right about in the middle a set of bar graphs that say polling. And if you click on that, then you should see the poll that Rebecca's talking about.
Great, thank you. So we'll give you 5 more seconds. Okay. So I'm sharing the results. You should be able to see that. It looks like most of us are between most of the time and every now and then. That's pretty good. I think that makes sense. That's some self-aware leadership. And so we'll have one more, another question. So the next one is question number 2. Is confidence learned? Is it a biological piece of your personality, so to speak, or is it something else? Or is it something in between? Are you born with it? That's the question. And I'll give you again 15-ish seconds to answer that. Great. Thank you. So I'll share those. That's not too surprising since we're all here today to talk about confidence, right? So most of us think that it's learned and nurtured. It can just be built up at any time. And then the other half-ish of us think that it's a mixture of both learned and part of you already. That's interesting. Nice. And if you have anything you want to add to your answers, feel free to put that in the chat box. We have one more question. 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 And so this last question is, do you think that tending to your confidence and groundedness as a leader is important to your team? Like, is this something that's important? Like, is this felt in your team? Is it important for the growth of your team? And then what does that mean to you? Like, yes, but not right now, or just curious about what does that look like to you in this moment? And again, I'll give you about 15-ish seconds. Okay. So I'll share the results. So everyone said yes in some way. So that's important. That's interesting to me, and I would love to hear at some point today in the chat box or when it feels relevant to you to share more about that. Like why, like in what way does it impact your team? I think that's an interesting question myself. So with that, we're going to continue kind of mapping out what our collective understanding of confidence is, confident cooperative leadership is. And I'm going to share a whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard, right here. And first I'll tell you the question, and then I'll tell you how to use this if you haven't used it before. So the question is, what's one thing about confident leadership that, like, what do you think about, what are some words that you think about when you think about confident cooperative leadership? Like 1 to 5 words. So how to use this is you can, if you scroll up, oh, see someone's already done that. If you scroll up, you hit settings and then annotate, and then it should come up with a bar, and you have a text ability, draw, you can draw a picture if you'd like. So those are some things you can do. So I'll write mine in here as well, and this will give us an interesting picture about what confident cooperative leadership means. So I will put a word in here just to continue this going. So my words are vulnerable but grounded. And you can put more than one thing on here. You can also change the color if that feels like helpful to convey your message.
Oh, nice. Kind. Oh, that's great.
Desire to involve. I like that kind is in purple. It feels helpful to me. Non-judgmental, innovational. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to add trust.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Open. Yeah.
Nice. So somebody circled that to kind of underline that spotlight. That resonates with them. Nice.
Yeah.
I'm noticing there's nothing like boss on here. Bossy, not part of confident cooperative leadership. I'll add another one here.
Nice. Not always having the answers, that's for sure.
Not always having the answers, which feels in conflict to what I've been taught much of my life about leadership. It's about having the answers. So this is a little different. And linking, I think this says. If it doesn't say that, you can speak up and let us know. That linking. Nice. We'll give you a couple more seconds for that.
Communication, yes. Huge.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll add one more, support. I'll add, which can look like people support or things to lean on that you know, like knowledge or tools, different ways of feeling supported. Appropriate risk taking. Yes.
Yes.
That's great. Great. Well, thank you. And I think that's helpful for us to have this collective understanding as we jump into this, that it's, there's a lot of things happening here. So I'm going to save that. And feel free to, if you have other ideas that come up, feel free to put them in the chat box as well. It's not the end of that conversation. And so the next thing we're going to do is we've kind of done a lot of anonymous sharing. So I want to kind of bring the more humanist part of cooperative leadership to you all, or to this space specifically. And if you want to share a video, that's very welcome. No pressure. But we're going to use the chat box to share what kinds of scenarios have you felt like you needed more confidence in, or perhaps that you noticed in other leaders around you. Like, what scenarios did you notice this lack of confidence that affected you or the team in some way? And I'll start just by sharing that I have seen some leaders not very confident in their decision-making facilitation skills. So facilitating a decision-making across multiple perspectives, which then led to just the loudest being heard and just the loudest having more weight on the decision, which kind of made that not as meaningful, because then it's not as cooperative or collective.
Yeah.
And we have a comment here that says hiding, emotionally charged interactions.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Cecile, when you say hiding, I'm imagining that you're seeing team members sort of hiding, and that undermines the overall team's confidence. Is that accurate? Feel free to clarify if you'd like what you mean by that.
Can I say something not in the chat box?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
So I'm a writer, and I've worked in several writers' rooms and worked with ones that run very differently. But my biggest challenge, I think, has been that a lot of people are not used to a collaborative approach to leadership. And so when I don't know, and I've kind of opened up the room for input, often like someone else tries to take over, like especially the men in the room, in my experience. Like there's like a sense of, so I've really had to work to set up what I'm doing, not just do it. I've had to like really set a context for it. And even still, I've just found people have various abilities to hang with a not knowing.
Yeah.
And how long they can do that, and willing to sort of stay in that space.
Right.
Nicely put, Marianne. Very true.
Great example.
Yeah. Great example for sure.
I'm happy to clarify if it
yes,
works.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. What I meant by hiding, it's my my team leader who is in a position where she doesn't have all the power herself, but is using this excuse for not leading. So it's always somewhere. It's so easy for all. So I'm in an organization where everyone is pushing their responsibility to someone else, and that doesn't help.
No.
Yeah. So, but today I realized that I have to be kind also, and not demanding too much from this team leader, because I understand the circumstances she is in, but it's hard to carry this yeah, how much a leader should be transparent. There is also a limit. Now it's too much transparency about all the uncertainties of the organization. That's so yeah, so we have too much uncertainties, everyone. Yeah, not carrying, like she's not carrying anything. So yeah, I'm a bit strong maybe in my words, but that's what I meant.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's, I definitely resonate with that example, that the lack of accountability for taking, like, for things being dropped or things being unstable, that someone or some people, like, responsibility needs to be taken so that things can move forward. Otherwise, it's distracting to push it onto someone else and not helpful. Although it's scary for that person, I'm sure, to be in that position. It's not fun, probably, but it's still, the morale is not, it's not good for morale. Great. And there's other examples in the comments. Having patience for the process. Yes, it's a great one. Patience, and I think that speaks to Marianne's point of getting people to be patient with how long some things take. Sometimes they take less time, but going through the process and trusting the process. And people not speaking up in larger meeting spaces, instead having side conversations in private with leadership or with others. That can definitely undermine confidence. Absolutely. Did you want to add something to that, Cecile?
Yeah, I just see that that's a really common pattern with teams that are trying to be collaborative, but don't really have a clear process for how that happens, or clear understanding of which decisions need to be made by the team, which of them can sort of reside elsewhere. And without that really clear boundary, often decisions are just made at the water cooler by whomever wants to make them. And that is really undermining of team confidence for sure. Yeah.
Thanks. And thanks for sharing, everybody. It's helpful for me to see this other picture about what's happening on the day-to-day and what is impacting groups and our own selves and our leadership. So thank you for sharing the other side of that. So now I want to pass it to Cecile to talk about this first of 4 tips around what we found building confidence in leadership, what can be helpful for building confidence in leadership. So I'll pass it to you, Cecile.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your contributions and thoughts. Having confident, cooperative, or collaborative, or participatory, put whatever term you want in there that talks about sharing power is tough. And our biggest first tip anyways is to add the tools and processes that the whole team and or organization can use to your own leadership toolbox. And this harkens back to the point I just made about needing to have really clear boundaries about which decisions are made where. Without that clarity, a lot of frustration and lack of traction for lack of clarity around who gets to decide what and where. And by the way, what decision-making process are we going to use, et cetera, et cetera. So this number 1 tip, getting to workable, collaborative, cooperative leadership is really benefited by having these clear tools. And I have my rationale for this is that as a species, we're emerging out of a very long history of autocratic leadership, top-down leadership. And this forms not just the basis for how we think about power and leadership, but all of the systems in our world and on many of our organizations are set up on this basis. And so we are literally having to create a new way to lead in the midst of certain assumptions about what it means to lead. So back to Marianne's point about having others jump in and try to take over because that's what they assume is needed, right? Rather than sitting with the not knowing. And so to create these new ways of leading, we must enter this new terra incognito, an unknown, an unfamiliar territory, not just for us maybe, but for our team, for our organizations. And we need to do this in order to create effective participatory patterns. And so I liken what those of us interested in collaborative participatory ways are doing to bushwhacking. We're essentially going into this unknown territory. It has not been mapped. We don't really know what's in there. And we're entering this place of trying to cooperate and self-organize when we've come from this other place of autocratic ways of leading. And as a bushwhacker in real life, I've learned that when I go into a new territory, it's super helpful to have a few things. First of all, a map. Really nice to have some visual of what am I going into, even if it's an abstraction, so a map. A good compass. I know which direction I'm heading and where I might want to go, what north on the compass means, right? And a means of traversing the terrain, of whether that's a good set of boots or some kind of vehicle, whatever that means is I need it. So as we navigate this cooperative participatory management, these same kind of tools are invaluable. And so let's say that having a practical understanding of what power is, how it flows, forms that map. It gives us this confidence that we have some sense of what's happening in this territory. We have some visual. We're then able to navigate the terrain of the organization through a vehicle of a set of communication practices. So the practices become our vehicle, and what guides us are our participatory values. So the compass is the values that we put into explicit action as we try to do this work together. So experiments into shared power can be fraught with confusion and conflict, since everyone essentially is coming with a different idea about what it means to share power and what it looks like, what it should feel like. And it's not so easy as just claiming that we're collaborative, right? There's a tremendous amount of knowledge and skill that goes into making collaborative and facilitative leadership efficient and effective. So that all of us can really experience that real tangible and proven benefits of collaborative leadership rather than having it sort of backfire. Which is common, and I've certainly been there and done that. So learning by trial and error is one way to go, but it's really nice to have some synthesized research to lean on. And so, really it makes sense that we would need a whole new way of building our confidence for this new unknown territory that we're entering into. And our cooperative leadership program that we mentioned earlier, we begin by integrating two tools that are really relatively easy to add to one's toolbox and make huge differences in both our own personal confidence and our team's effectiveness when facilitated well. And so we want to just briefly introduce you all to these two tools and some directions that you can consider when boosting your confidence in your own cooperative leadership. So first off, we talk about the standard meeting practice. And this practice builds confidence because A, it's researched and it's been proven in action to work for any kind of meeting, any kind of team, and it covers all of the communication needs of a team. So this means that once you've learned it and integrated it, and hopefully you recognize in this some basic best practices for meetings, right? Some of the key ways in which it's collaborative are really in the details of how we do things like agenda processing, but basically, once you know this tool, it means that you can show up in any meeting ready to facilitate, knowing that you'll do a good job of it, and that really helps with our own confidence. It's also centered around a practice of inviting all our team members to bring forward whatever is on their mind with respect to their team, from celebrations of work done well to things that need to change. And it builds engagement and team confidence as everyone gets on the same page with the practice. You kind of learn where to show up, how to show up, where your needs can be presenced, what you can expect. And it builds organizational responsiveness because everyone is in the organization has been empowered to see what's needed and has a place to go where they can bring that forward and see something positive happen out of that, see some traction begin to emerge. So one of our recent students mentioned that even the first time they use a standard meeting practice, the entire team was so energized and excited. They normally had like 3-hour meetings and basically didn't get anything out of those times. And so using standard meeting practice, they were just floored. The meeting took half the time and they got through everything on their agenda. So clearly a huge improvement over what can be standard fare for teams that are trying to be collaborative. And another student shared, you'll see the up on the slide there, but basically it has been transformative for teams to sort of implement this, what seems to be very simple, very straightforward practice. So that's one. Let's show you another tool now, which is a decision-making process that we call integrative consent. And this also builds up tremendous confidence in our cooperative leaders because it gives us step-by-step directions that we can follow to facilitate complex and contentious decisions to clear and workable decisions. And succeeding under these kinds of conditions builds such confidence in the facilitators we train. It also gives us confidence in recognizing and reducing bias in action because we're consistently and actively making room for all the voices on the team. Even if we know there are differing perspectives, we're able to invite those in actually to use those as a resource with this kind of a process rather than shy away from it because we know it's been problematic in the past. So another benefit of this is that knowing how to use integrative consent will give you the confidence to know when a decision is really needed or not. Not every item needs to be moved forward by a decision, and some teams like try to use, like once they have a hammer, they try to nail everything. But the nuance behind integrative consent will give you the confidence to know when do we need a decision, when do we not, when do we need a different kind of output from our conversation. And because these two tools are really well connected, our participants have felt more confident in their ability to facilitate teams through a truly democratic process at a relatively rapid pace. Which, to harken back to one of the comments, having patience with the process is really important, but it's also really important to have a process that's worthy of patience, and not all of them are. So that's a place to look in your own toolbox and see whether or not you have the kind of tools that deserve patience. Otherwise, you're sort of burning people out on processes that are not actually effective. And here's one more testimonial from a student of ours. Hopefully gives you a sense of some of the benefits. But yeah.
Great. Thanks, Cecile. I really, that point about a tool that really works for your team, that is rapid, that's not burning your team out, that, you know, is useful to your needs is such an important thing. That it's not just because, not to have tools just to use them, but that they're really serving your team. And sometimes those tools need to change as teams grow or shift what they need. So I just want to sum that up, that in your tip is to find a set of tools that gives you the confidence that you're not giving up on your values to be collaborative or cooperative, while also facilitating your team to move forward efficiently together. And we're using the tools from our course because that's what we know best. That's what we've really worked to design to be useful, and it makes sense to talk about them. And they're created by integrating all these types of theories and practices that support healthy collaboration in teams. So we witnessed these tools being really useful, and happy to share more about them. And I'll share the slides with you as well to explore how they might be helpful for your team. So with that, tip number 2.
Tip number 2, a community of practice to learn from. We're really changing culture when we're talking about building cooperative workspaces. And it's so helpful to have a community of practitioners to get feedback from, to bounce ideas off of, to keep you accountable to your own cooperative values. And having that community of practice builds confidence because you'll be learning from others, also solidifying and growing alongside others, solidifying your skills, and learning from all of the situations that everyone else is encountering. So you're multiplying your learning by participating in a community of practice. And that's exactly what we've also designed into our own training, is this intimate cohort design that gives you the access to people and all of their experiences and learning, along with a monthly community of practice option to participate in. And here's another one of our recent grads who shares her experience with with that particular part of our course.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, one of the great things about that is that you get to learn from other people's hang-ups and where processes aren't working for them. You get to learn from them. So you don't always have to trial and error in your own team, but collectively learning from trial and error.
Yeah. So in particular, the community of practice builds confidence because it helps to ground and strengthen our own leadership styles. You can give and receive feedback, sort of practice in that community together. It's also a place to stay aligned and connected to living out your own values and strengthening shared leadership. And it's tangible to your needs while being able to have a theoretical space to learn from others and to get support from your peers. Mm-hmm. So this tip number 2 is to find or build a community of practice which will help you strengthen your own confidence by keeping you accountable to the ways that you find valuable about leading and increasing the rate at which you learn.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a bit underestimated how important a community of practice can be, because it's also the place where people are grappling with those questions around patience and those questions around people are undermining my leadership, and learning from other people, and also connecting that that's such a human feeling, which can be validating and also helpful for sticking with it. So just want to emphasize that.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So tip number 3, this is a really important one, and again, vastly underutilized by our society at large, but is to get connected to your own body. Here we're talking about a somatic or bodily awareness practice that builds your own personal coherence and enables you to facilitate more group coherence, which leads to better outcomes. So our bodies are this vast resource that is largely ignored in our culture. And when we reverse that trend over time through practice, increasing our ability to sense and notice what's happening to us somatically and then also to others somatically, our facilitators notice their own capacity to navigate these difficult, tense, and charged situations with much more capacity, resulting in more effective teams and more facilitator confidence. And because of that, we've included it as a module in our certification because it's such a tremendous facilitation resource. When we as facilitators can tap into that, access it, build it, increase it, strengthen it for ourselves, it becomes a grounded confidence that is felt by a whole team. So it's not just about you, it's about how this gets perceived and received by others that you're on a team with. So for example, when things get hot in a conversation, we're better able to listen and respond appropriately rather than getting sucked in and reacting, right? We can also sense when there's a tension in the room that has not been resolved, and that can provide direction as to where we go next as a facilitator. And one of our students found that by focusing their own personal development on a somatic practice really enabled her to stop undermining herself and do the hard things that she needed to move herself and her own leadership forward. So it has a profound personal implication as well. So in sum here, starting a regular practice of checking in with your body will get you rolling on this front. There's a lot more to it, but that simple intentionality of listening to, honoring, responding to what's going on in our bodies is huge. And it can be helpful to have an accountability practice set up or a community of practice where you can sort of keep coming back to this question of how is your somatic practice evolving, because it's an ongoing thing. It's not a one-stop fix for sure. Which leads us into tip number 4. And this is about going deep and not just scratching the surface. We are talking about a transformation of how we lead from thousands of years of historical backlog of leading autocratically. So the call here today is to, understand ways for you to be a really strong, confident leader by, understanding this idea of technical versus adaptive change. So just briefly, technical change is the kind of change where we're learning new skills or instituting a new procedure that can be followed, boom, 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 and it solves a problem, right? So for example, a technical change would be learning the new tools we mentioned earlier, the integrative consent and the standard meeting practice, and how to facilitate it well. That's a technical change. Adaptive change is when we or our organizations need to adapt and evolve or grow ourselves from the inside out in order for the change to actually take hold. And this requires innovation and learning. So for example, adaptive change might be tending to your own confidence when you know each step of the process. So you might, for example, explore what lack of confidence feels like somatically and create a practice to shift to confidence whenever you would like to, rather than sort of being at the whim of whether or not you happen to feel confident in the moment. You can invoke confidence. And these same principles hold true whether we're talking about individual change or about organizational or team change. To be the democratic workplaces that we aspire to and to grow out of the long history of autocratic leadership we've all come from, we need both adaptive and technical change. And to build leadership confidence, we need to know how to facilitate both kinds of change. We need to know when to recognize, oh, technical change here, adaptive change here. How do we weave these two together? And so in our course, we include both the tools and structures for technical change and the adaptive change skills of personal development and somatics and team adaptation. Together, these work to really get at the heart of what it means to be a cooperative leader for each person. So for sure, it's more than just about tools. It's about shifting power in a deep, consistent, and caring way. And there's a little example from Erica Buswell of some of the implications of being able to make use of these perspectives and tools.
Mm-hmm. Specifically, humanizing her ideas around what it even means to be a leader. Like, what were the expectations? Not always have the answer, but to know how to facilitate her team to find the right answer. And that she didn't have to have it all figured out every step of the way, but knowing that she needed that her own leadership was personally developing it, professionally developing her leadership. And that helped her to know that she wasn't going to reach leadership, but that it was a process for her, which is a pretty mind-shifting ideal, to go from a leader is this to a leader is much different. Which is kind of cool.
Indeed. So yeah, the tip here is go deep so that you can leverage both the technical and adaptive change. And that takes time and intention and focus.
Great. So that was a lot of information. So I want to share a big picture view. We've designed our course to include all of this and for our community of cooperative leaders. And these are the top things that we've incorporated into it. So your next steps for yourself are to consider how you might bring these aspects into your leadership to increase your confidence. Maybe you have access to these kinds of things already. Maybe you're just putting more attention to it, and you can consider for yourself if this course is right for you. You can apply and continue the conversation with me about how you might want to nurture your confidence through that. That's an option, of course. So and the applications are due September 10th, and it starts at the end of September, the course does. And to list out the tips, you see them on the screen, but the first one is to find a set of tools that gives you the confidence that you're not giving up on any of your cooperative values, while also facilitating your team to move forward efficiently together. The second one is to find or build a community of practice to help you build your own confidence by keeping you accountable to the ways that you want to lead and increasing the rate at which you learn by learning from each other, right? And the third one is to start a regular practice of checking in with your body, which everyone has access to that, just a 10-second check-in at any point, but really having making sure that you're accountable to yourself, to setting that time aside, even if it's just 10 seconds, to doing it on a regular daily practice. It can be helpful to have a community to support you on that and to guide you for whatever might come up a lot of things are held in our body that we don't know about. And the fourth one is to go deep so that you can leverage technical change and achieve real adaptive change. So just to sum up, the technical change being those things, those hard tools that you learn, how to facilitate the standard meeting practice, whereas adaptive change is the confidence within it, potentially the groundedness that you might feel, whatever is stopping you from facilitating your team. It might be more than just a tool. Often it's both. Often we need both types of change. So this change often takes time, and we've designed our course to meet weekly for 10 weeks with lots of interactions and intangible projects to build up that confidence. And just a few hours each week, people really feel some serious shifts, as we've shared today. So I encourage you to go deeper and invest in yourself for meaningful impact, whatever that means. And that this 1 hour call is one step along the way. So with that, we have a practice of clarifying outputs, or what's next. So we want to have, what we want to do is offer you a moment to think about what's your next step on your list. Is this a new policy for yourself to do, or a new pattern to have a somatic practice every day? Or does it make sense for you to have, like, write down some things that you might do, some next actions for yourself or next steps? So I'll pass it to Cecile to facilitate you a little bit more through that.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, so we're just going to take a couple of minutes in silence for each of us to reflect on what you've received here today, and identify what stood out for you. Like, what is one takeaway that you would like to take with you as you leave this call today? And could be a specific goal. Rebecca's just mentioned a few, but let's just take a couple minutes right now. I'll let you know when our time is up. And we'll have a minute to share back if you wish, and also to ask any questions. So this is a great time to surface any questions you have that might be useful for you at this time. All right, 2 minutes of reflective silence. Just about another 20, 30 seconds. And that's our time for reflection. So if you feel complete, feel free to bring your attention back to our our little Zoom room here together, and we just want to invite you to share what you're taking away with you if you'd like, or if you have any questions, and just feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like and share verbally. If you are more comfortable with the chat box, feel free to use that as well. But just anything that stood out for you, any questions you have.
To break the ice. Oh, do I see a reach? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Paul in Boston. I like that you emphasized the distinction and the importance of both technical level and a deeper evolutionary level, I could call it. And then secondly, I was surprised but appreciative that you, out of the 4 things to start with, you talked about body awareness and called it a resource. I have one nerdy question about that, and if it's too nerdy for the whole group, then you can respond by email later or something, which is some people distinguish between the knowledge called somatic experiencing and others between somatic practice. You've used the phrase somatic practice, which tends to be, to my understanding, more immediate and short-term. Do you have training in somatic experiencing? It's a whole therapeutic certification.
Correct. No, I don't personally, but one of our other team members does, and she is the one who's helped us sort of integrate some of this material into our work here in leadership. So, from my perspective, I think both are important. And it depends upon what situation you're in and what you're trying to develop in yourself as to whether you'd pull more on one tradition or another. But in general, I would say that holding this as a lifelong practice, that we can continue to grow in our capacity to sense and respond to our environments somatically is where I lean in terms of being able to leverage this resource.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Hey, maybe I can share something?
Please. Yes.
Yes. I was just reflecting that I am actually in the middle of a change in my team. That is like the new team leaders are, I think, more inclined to collaborative leadership. And although I am very longing for this as well on my own, but I noticed that I am myself actually resisting when I see my boss being vulnerable and I'm still using the word boss because we use it here, chef, in Swedish. Yeah. I'm working on the public sector in a public university, so it's a special institution where change is very slow, and some people say it for a good reason, but so it's so interesting that I am also myself I'm so used to this autocratic kind of leadership that I need actually to also I've learned a lot. Just being interested in it is really not enough. Yeah, so thanks you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being willing to walk into the unknown, right? And to not be sure to what this is, and still value it. I think that's an important beginning for sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
You too.
I had what came up for me in the 2 minutes was that I know an executive training organization that I'm close with who just kind of did away with their CEO and is trying what you're talking about. And I'm wondering how best to put them in touch with you. Like, can you share an email or? because I'm gonna reach out to them and see, you know, if I could start a conversation that would. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can email both of us, or yes, whatever's easiest.
Okay.
Happy to chat further for sure.
And because for me, I'm most interested in, I would love to be in the room with them while they're taking this class with you, because for me as a storyteller, you know, I think what you're doing is so important in terms of learning how to share power and the challenges that are coming up around that in, you know, and especially in some of the big corporations that they're working with, because they've been challenged when somebody really tries to step into this model, that they often end up being fired, you know, or yeah. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm interested to see if this other organization that I know is grappling with it, if they might be interested as well. And I would love to know what story has emerged from that personally.
and also just the strong value of telling this in story form, right? Because this is endemic in our world, and being able to convey this through story form as to what changes and what's possible, and these common experiences that we all have, could be so valuable, Marianne. So I really,
I mean, hope. It's so relevant to the television series I'm working on right now.
Oh, nice.
So I just got that, like, oh, it'd be so cool to like travel along on that journey if they're up for it. So
nice. Well, I love it.
Next step.
Cool.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for your energy, for sharing your experiences and being here today for this quick hour and 2 minutes. But we're gonna jump off for now, but I'll send out the recording by tomorrow, as well as the slides. And feel free to email myself or Cecile if you have any further questions or things that bubble up after this that you want to explore with us. Including storytelling or vulnerability and leadership and whatever is coming up for you. All right, feel free to open your mics and say bye if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your interest in this topic. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.